All right, I'm here with Sam Seraphim, who is the founding partner of Woodlake Group, which is a New York-based family office that invests in lower middle market companies here in the U.S., and also Dan Gross, who is an associate partner at AAVIN Equity Advisors. And you invest, I believe it is, based in the Midwest, but invest nationwide?
That's right. That's right. We're a small private equity fund based in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, the hotbed of private equity activity, certainly. But no, historically we've invested primarily in the upper Midwest, but as capital markets have grown more efficient, we too have broadened that to cover continental U.S.
Good. Can you set the stage a little bit more about AAVIN, the background, what type of companies you invest in, and then I'll turn it over to Sam for Woodlake, and then go into kind of how you guys know each other.
Sure. Yeah. So the background in AAVIN, we have our roots, sort of at the advent of private equity investing back in the late 1950s. Actually, started the SBIC program. The predecessor organizations of AAVIN were the principals were a part of that. So ever since then, in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, there's been private investing taking place. Again, historically in the upper Midwest, but as the funds have developed, we've broadened that to across the country. Our relationship with Sam predates my time. I've been with AAVIN about 3 years, and believe Sam and a couple of our partners, David Schroeder in particular, have had relationships. Showed each other deals. I know there was one deal in the previous fund that they were co-investors on, where Sam led the transaction. I believe that was up in Wisconsin, and so there was a working relationship there with Sam and Woodlake, and obviously appreciated his insights and activities. In probably early 2016, again, before my time at AAVIN, but introduced the standard precast transaction, which we immediately thought was an attractive deal, and worked with Sam as a co-investor there to lead the transaction, and turned out to be a great deal for us.
Awesome. Sam, can you give some background on Woodlake, and then into how you came about with the standard precast transaction, and we can just kind of go back and forth with that.
Woodlake is a firm of independent sponsors and private investors. We doing this for a number of years now. Came across standard precast in the spring of 2016. Thought the margins were attractive. Great company. Visited, got it tied down in an LOI, and reached out to our friends at AAVIN, with whom we had a relationship in the past. Kirk Kahlberg was the partner at the time. He has since passed on, regrettably. A great fella, and we looked at this together. He thought it was a great transaction. He shared it with his partners, and they decided to come in. We divvied up the pie, how much they would invest, how much we would invest. We brought in another firm into the transaction. The rest is history. It's been a great success. I think maybe we leave it at that.
Well, can we talk a little bit about the dynamics of how do you have a successful kind of co-investing relationship? What are the principles of a successful co-investing relationship?
Yeah, I guess from our perspective, it starts with trust. It starts with transparency in terms of what roles are, who's going to be sort of doing what, whether that's kind of day-to-day management or working closer with the management team, particularly when you're working with folks that often, if you co-invest with other funds, it's clearer what the role is going to be kind of similar. But if you sort of co-invest with, an independent sponsor, someone that's hopefully bringing additional value beyond just kind of the board level, which we've always felt Sam and Woodlake have been able to do. Again, so it starts with kind of transparency and trust in what the roles will be. And then beyond that, it's working on that foundation to kind of iron out what we think the growth plan is for the business, what the priorities are, make sure you're upfront about those early on. I think Standard represents a great example of that, and in particular, Woodlake's ability to kind of set a path and then execute against it. And so with us, closed the deal at the end of 2016. Sam very early on identified a very nice, attractive bolt-on transaction that enabled us to grow our geographic footprint. Standard had a great presence in Northeast Florida, but its products are so heavy, you're sort of constrained geographically based on freight. And so we needed to add an acquisition to expand our geography to grow the business. That was the agreed upon path starting out. And day one, Sam was looking at those sorts of opportunities, found a great one, executed against it, and continued to build that. That really kickstarted the growth of Standard Precast. So again, the trust factor, the transparency in terms of what the role is and then what the plan is, I would say are the key things for having a successful relationship with a co-investor.
Sam, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you've done a lot of co-investing in your decades of experience, and what have you found to be kind of the key principles of successfully working with other capital providers?
It depends on our role, and it depends on the partner. Some situations, a partner would like to be more involved in the transaction, a potential partner. So we tend to define the rules very early on because we are a very focused, hands-on partner. We participate in the day-to-day operations, keep in touch with company, develop information systems if they don't have them. So in this situation, we bought this company. It was greenfield in terms of information systems, great management team, many years of experience, but didn't have all the bells and whistles that we want to have. Financial reporting was weak. And so we spent a lot of time doing that. When we made the acquisition of this company that Dan mentioned, we had to make sure that the numbers were there for us. So we developed daily, weekly reporting plus the monthly. And to go back to what we're looking for in a partner, we are believers in great communications, sharing information. Board meetings are enough for some people, but we like to inform more than the board meetings. We'd like to have an educated board so that when it comes to meeting and discussing what we're going to do or have done or plan to do, we are there very quickly at the same level. We and our partners agree this has been the foundation, this is what we need to do. Communications is very important, and then defining roles, as Dan said, we will do this and they will do that, and then go forward.
What are some, I'd like to put some meat on this bone. What are some times, maybe in your respective careers, where communication was being tested or trust was being tested, and how you got through that? Because right now we're kind of talking very high level, like everyone says trust, everyone says transparency. But what are some examples that might come to mind on how you actually were a trusted partner, maybe when things got tough?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can think of kind of two situations with this transaction with Sam and Woodlake. Again, at the onset, the roles were defined where AAVIN is going to be sort of at the board level, Sam closer to the management team, working closer to a day-to-day level with them. Early on in the deal, we hired a new CFO, and for a couple different reasons, had to make a change there. And so Sam and Woodlake stepped in and acted as acting CFO. They stepped into that role because there was a void, and again the context of the transaction was that they were going to be closer to management and closer to the day-to-day activities. And so while we did not at the onset say, hey, you guys are sort of acting CFO in this deal, once we had a void there, once we had a need, they stepped in immediately and did a great job. And actually, beyond just kind of keeping the lights on, getting the financial reports out, you actually made some improvements in the financial reporting of the company. So that was a great one, and an example of again, where we've got an alignment in terms of early on that, at the onset, who would step into that role. But again, it's, a testament to Sam and his group that they stepped in immediately and did a great job. Similarly, we had a transition plan at the top of the organization too, the CEO. We had sort of come to an agreement on the transition timing that was accelerated. And so we had a need. And again, beyond just the CFO role, Sam and his team stepped in as the CEO role of the business, and again, did a great job, beyond just kind of continuing the momentum that had been built and developed at this great company, really looked to improve some of the operating procedures and competitive position in the business. So again, starting with, it was a alignment up front in terms of the activities and the roles that each group would be doing. But again, it really came to bear when we had the need, and Woodlake and Sam stepped up to fill that void.
Sam, what are your thoughts?
Sometimes you have to take initiatives, and we thought we needed to hire salespeople. So we identified one or two people, because when we bought the company, we had 3 salespeople. And by the time we sold the company, we had 8 salespeople. We needed somebody in target, the company we acquired, the portfolio company or the sister company. And so I remember discussing that with Kirk and also Dan and Paul, that we need to add 1 or 2 people, and time was short. I added them and then went over their backgrounds and watched them carefully to make sure that they were performing in their jobs. So sometimes we take an initiative and inform people after the fact. Sometimes we share numbers and information ahead of time. For the CFO, we actually collected, this is a manufacturing business we bought, we collected 90 resumes. We summarized that down to a few that we wanted to interview, and then shared those resumes with our partners at AAVIN, and allowed them to opine on, yep, this is a good fellow, this woman may not be the right person. And then when it came down to finally interviewing them, I think one of the AAVIN guys came down, and I think Paul came down and participated in the interviewing. So it's a very collaborative thing. People don't like surprises. I don't like surprises. I don't think AAVIN likes surprises, and I think we need to keep them informed.
So maybe kind of shifting gears a little bit. I noticed that I've kind of 2 remaining questions. One is that you both come from a consulting background, and Sam, your consulting experience, I think it was with Bain, was up in Canada, and you're McKinsey. Sorry,
you're McKinsey, weren't you? Yeah, you're McKinsey.
Please, big difference.
Well, I'd love to kind of hear what are some of the, like, how your background in consulting has been applied to how you think about the investing role.
Investing is about understanding the target company you're going to buy. And there's a lot of analysis that goes into it. And so there are skills that I learned at McKinsey, my own background as an engineer. The numbers are important, digging into the facts and putting issue analysis together on the company. And so the engineering and consulting background was important for us to dig in, to be able to get behind the numbers and behind the issues in a company. So it isn't just the numbers, but it's the issues behind that. And then, people are very important. And one thing that struck us about Standard is the longevity of the people there. We talked about it before we invested. We thought, oh man, these guys have been around for a while. Maybe we need to change them. But once we started interacting with them before we closed on the company, the AAVIN partners and I felt, these are good guys. They know their stuff. They've been around for a while. And so that really was helpful for us to dig in and understand people and numbers.
Yeah. Dan, what about you? Your experience, I think you're at BCG for a couple of years. Like, 1, why did you leave? And then 2, like, consulting as an industry, and then kind of going into, like, how is it applied to your day to day? Is it really front of mind? Like, actually, oh my God, like, I use this stuff every day.
Yeah, no, I do. And to Sam's point on a typical misconception of consultants would have been that we would have come in and cleaned house or done some other things that consultants sometimes do. But no, I mean, the roles are very similar. So I was at BCG for a couple of years. The reason for leaving was really to kind of switch from the service provider side to the ownership investor side. That's the biggest difference that I've really seen. The other thing is I really like working with small businesses, and you can't really, the economics don't work at BCG to consult with smaller businesses. So, that was kind of the switching from a service provider to a more ownership and investor role was key to my decision. As well as, a desire to work with smaller businesses as opposed to Fortune 100 or whatever. In terms of the activities and the similarities in the role, fundamentally, I think consulting and the skills that you learn, it's about structuring and solving ambiguous problems. And an investor role, that's what you're faced with every day. That's what you're faced with, at the beginning of a transaction, looking to see, do I like this business? It's a bunch of whys, right? Why is the margin this? And usually the margin leads to competitive position, the dynamics with the supply chain, et cetera. You can really kind of see and then see the margin in the financial statements, but then the consulting hat goes to tell you, okay, why is that the case? That's something that was drilled into us, certainly at BCG. So I think the roles are very similar. I think the skills that you can learn in consulting, I think you absolutely saw this from Sam, both as an engineer. I think, sort of an engineering background and a consulting background really do go hand in hand. And you could really see that with Sam. There'll be some board meetings, if you work with folks that, sort of are at the, more of a traditional finance role, where, it's a lot of sort of data regurgitation. It's sort of, this is what the margin is, this is what the numbers are, et cetera. But you're always wanting, okay, why is that the case? What's happening there? What's going on? What's the story behind this? That's really a consulting kind of question. And I never had that sense with Sam. Sam was always up in front of those questions. And I think that is a testament to both his background as an engineer and his time at McKinsey.
3 degrees in engineering, Sam.
That's another story there.
Well, maybe for our last topic, Dan, you were talking about how you made the shift to the principal investing role because you want to work with small businesses. Or Dan, you did. So this is kind of the final, maybe most important question. Like, why do you do what you do, investing in small businesses? Like, what is it about this job that makes you not just get up in the morning, but like love what you are doing?
Start of it is curiosity. That was part of the reason I went into consulting, is I wanted to work with a bunch of different types of businesses. And so you certainly get that in this role. You see all sorts of different types of businesses. As a genuinely curious person, I really am satisfied just by learning new things and different types of businesses. In terms of why small businesses, then, it kind of comes back to, at the end of the day, do you sit back and think, did what I did today, matter? Did I have an impact? Not necessarily kind of on society, et cetera, but can I see where what I was doing led to some progress in terms of a company's performance or growth of business, et cetera. And I think you can really see that easily with small business. And so I think it's in larger organizations, there are plenty, in my view, of individuals, of resources behind those. Small businesses is where the need is greater, I think. And as a result, when you're working with them, you can really see the progress. And I think it's very satisfying work because I think that need is there. I think you can really help some of these businesses grow. It's just the best feeling in the world to see a business go from a nice, solid, stable business to an exceptional business and see the growth behind the people, behind the, obviously the financial results of the organization, and to see how that really empowers people.
That's awesome. Sam, what about you?
It's one of, well, let me back up a little bit. 3 degrees in engineering, publications, PhD. And I suddenly found after I left engineering that this is what I love. The intellectual curiosity is there. That's how I got into engineering and asking questions and publishing papers. But this is much more real and it's much more day to day. And so I love the hunt for a transaction, the hunt for the right kind of company, the digging in, the intellectual curiosity, not just about numbers, but the business model, the people, what makes them tick, because without people, you have nothing. And when they have problems, how are they facing them, both at the workplace and at home? Sometimes you hear of things and you have to stand by them. And so it's that intellectual, real life curiosity that I like about investing. We don't make one investment, we make a number over time. And so we make one, build it up, and then move on. We may make investments in 2, acquire them and build them up, and then, or 3. And so over a number of years, we've had 15 platforms, and each one has had its own little bits and pieces that are different. But it's that, as Dan correctly said, it's that intellectual curiosity that is more satisfying than anything else.
Yeah. Well, maybe as the parting question, we'll wrap up in 5, is what are you most curious about now that is not related to your work? either a book that you're reading or a thesis you're exploring. It could be and something maybe not related to daycare, making sure we have people in the right daycare, or kids related. But what is something that you're most curious about now that is not related to your business?
Dan, you go ahead.
Yeah,
Here's the bus
I
under.
have young children. I have young children. I just saw a story of a 3-year-old son who's extremely into dinosaurs right now, and I just saw this massive Spinosaurus skeleton was discovered in southern Morocco, and it was the first dinosaur that can swim. So I just, it's a very interesting point in sort of the evolutionary journey to look at that. And so I saw the headline. I haven't read the article yet, but that's top of mind for me right now, and certainly not business related at all.
Awesome. Sam, what about you?
I'm a voracious reader, so I can't give you a list of books I'm reading, but I'll tell you what fascinates me today is the COVID-19 issue, how it crept in here, crept into China, crept around the world, and how nobody thought of it, nobody knew about it, the devastating impact it's having. And I'm thinking ahead, how can things change? Our lives are going to change. Travel, of course, is going to change. I'm supposed to travel to visit a portfolio a target company, and thinking how we're going to get there. So it's that issue of this COVID-19 and how it's going to affect our day-to-day lives and the investing business. What are opportunities?
Yes, you cheated, Sam. That
Cheated,
absolutely
Sam.
will
All right, guys. Well, hey, this has been fun. I appreciate your time with this, and look forward to chatting soon.